Здравствуйте. Извините, потому что я не говорю по-русски, только чуть-чуть, но я буду рассказывать, почему я люблю Москву. I've been working on placemaking for over 20 years, a little all over Europe, and I've had the chance as well to work in Russia for the last 10 to 15 years, depending on the period. So what is placemaking? It's quite simple. It is when a space designed by an architect is filled with people and create a community life all around. This is a very good example done in London of King's Cross terminal, which was designed by Marcastle and Partners with a great design at the beginning. Then it started to be open to the public, and then it started to foster a great community life around. And the question now is, why is that so important for cities to actually foster this placemaking in the residential neighborhoods? Well, we all know that the modern world is not so much about the competition between the states, but between the cities. And the cities have to stand firm so that they compete between each others to attract the best talents. And it's not by chance that you may see that in the city of Moscow, that is marketing itself as a place to live, because it's actually part of the competition all over the world. So what kind of placemaking happens and is done mainly by designers? Well, when you Google placemaking, creative placemaking, you find plenty of literature. It's great. It's really great. And you end up even with a formula. Let's stop a couple of seconds on this formula. And it goes from people to memory, from the number of people that a space is able to welcome, or from a number of people that live into a place, to the memory that this place fosters into the mind of the people. In between, you have many other parameters like time and attention and intensity of the activity in this place. It's a kind of formula that many designers use in order to create a great place, not only a space. So how does that apply to Moscow when working on a series of centers, community centers in neighborhoods, in living neighborhoods? I've been working mainly on these four cities for the past 6 years: Paris, Warsaw, Brussels, and Moscow. And when you look at these cities, of course the territory is not at all the same, but there is one parameter that is really striking, is the density of people per square kilometer. Paris, 22,000 people per square kilometer. Moscow, 9,000 people per square kilometer. Just this parameter tells you a lot that already the process of placemaking will be different. We'll necessitate a different approach, a different sensitivity to the city. So I was traveling every week for the last 5 years before I moved to here. And this is how I felt about Moscow. Arriving late at night, departing early in the morning, with gray weather, with cold weather, seeing a lot of the construction inside the city, a lot of different scales being together, the big scale and the small scale of the buildings, again, traffic jam. This is the kind of sense of the city that you get when you come or here only for a couple of hours or a couple of days to work. Sometimes you have a glimpse at what could be a nice neighborhood in Moscow, but you just go very fast through this. And you see a lot of construction. And at the best, this is the kind of feeling that you could have when you go very fast into the city. So I said, no, I must miss something. This is not Moscow. This is not going to be the parameters that will allow me to develop a great place within Moscow. So I decided to move. I decided to move to Moscow to actually develop empathic placemaking, to start understanding what the feeling of the people were, to actually feel this myself in order to understand where I was supposed to create great places. So the experience part of placemaking was becoming true to me. And I was working on these rayons between the third ring and the MCAD, where over 10 million people live. From the official numbers, over 12 millions. Of course, we hear a very large range of numbers, but that's from the official sources. 10 million people out of 12 live in these rayons. So this was what I was interested in. And I started to look with the team at 3 very important parameters from these people, what they feel, what they think about their living neighborhoods. 70% of them had never moved out of their neighborhoods. Who lives in Moscow here? Do you recognize yourself in this number? No, no. Not any Moscovite told me, yes, I recognize myself. But it's a true number. This is coming from Archaeology of Periphery, a great study done by the city. So 70% of the neighborhood livers actually never moved out of their neighborhood. In Paris, for instance, one person moves in average 4.6 times in his life out of his city. Here, 70% never moved. Another very important point is 46% of the people spend their free time into their neighborhood. Again, who does this here? Very few. I don't see the 46%. So what is these numbers about? Are we real people or? And now this one. 90% of these people living in these neighborhoods actually are proud of their neighborhood. This is when you ask them, are you proud of your neighborhood? Are you happy living here? And they say yes at 90%. Are you happy with your neighborhood? Are you ready to stand up for your neighborhood? It's becoming more true here. Okay, so what this told me is that I had a very wrong image of Moscow, even traveling every week, even spending time within the city, even visiting some sites. All the image I got was quite wrong. So I wondered how to experience this from myself when I moved to Moscow. I start looking at my window, and this is what I saw. First day. Well, it's okay, not too much snow, not too much clouds. And second day, wow, that's different. And third day, and fourth day, and after day after day, after weeks, after month, and I discovered a completely different light in Moscow. I started to look at the city very differently. I started to actually feel it with different lights. This picture from Tamara Rain, look at it very carefully. This painter used to live next to Arbat. Then she moved to join her daughter. You will see what she painted after. I started to see some colors in the city, finally. I started to see great trees. It's amazing how the trees of Moscow are visible in every street. Not like Paris. The blocks are closed in Paris. The trees are inside. You don't see them in the street. Although it can be a boulevard, then you see this. But in little streets, you won't see trees. They are not planted in the streets. They are inside the blocks. In Moscow, the blocks are open. And it's very often that you can see trees passing over the blocks. Very characteristic to Moscow. Then I started to see some retail. Finally, I'm working in this industry, and I can see some retail in the street. And I see some old and new next to each other, which is, okay, not only under construction, but it's how the city is processing its making of. And then finally, the people living there. I spent a lot of time within these neighborhoods. I got lost many times. Once, I remember, I was entering a little cross between two streets, And then I started to hear some birds. I closed the eyes, and I started to hear some people shouting to each other across the windows. I opened the eyes, I saw some lingerie over the windows. I say, am I in Italy here or am I in Moscow? That was in June, okay. Very nice weather, I agree. So all of this really created a very different feel. Tamara Rain again. She moved into these neighborhoods, and she spent the rest of her days painting the life of these neighborhoods with a lot of kids, a lot of actually street life with ice rinks. My kids in Moscow love Moscow also for this. They spend a lot of time with their Russian friends on the ice rinks in Чистые пруды. And then I discovered the importance of flowers. Just simple things like this on some days of the year. Of course, lovers in the streets, and that was not far away, some bicycles on the street. When we moved here 5 years ago, there were no bicycle on the street. Look at what Moscow has done over 5 years. It would have taken 15 years, and it has taken 15 years in Paris to actually achieve this. Moscow is just great, with a lot of life, a lot of high quality space. Just it needs empathy. It needs empathy from designers, but also from its inhabitants, its residents, to be expressed. So this is the same formula. And in order to develop placemaking in Moscow, we just add empathy to it. That's very crucial for Moscow because it's hidden. It's within your heart. It's maybe within my heart, but I could not identify it before I lived here. So I really encourage you, because there are great projects within Moscow residential neighborhoods, to stand up and express your empathy for your neighborhoods, because it won't be the foreign designers or the foreign consultants that will actually take the step and make it. Thank you. Я люблю Москву.